next laureate in the category of Humanities is a historian of outstanding achievement. He's produced field-changing research on India and Southeast Asia. He's a professor at Harvard University, and he did his doctoral research from the University of Cambridge. To announce the award, it is my honor to introduce the winner of the 1998 Nobel Prize in Economics and Bharat Ratna, Professor Amartya Sen. In 2011, Professor Sen was presented the National Medal of Arts and National Humanities by President Obama. His research ranges over social choice theory, economic theory, ethics, political philosophy, and public health. He is the Thomas W. Lamar University Professor and Professor of Economics and Philosophy at Harvard. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Amartya Sen, Jury Chair for the Infosys Prize in Humanities.
Well, I better begin with the formal part, namely the announcement, which have been handed to me to read out, and it runs something like this. The Infosys Prize 2016 for Humanities is awarded to Professor Sunil Amrith, Mehra Family Professor of South Asian Studies, Professor of History, Harvard University, for his outstanding contribution to the history of migration, environmental history, and the history of international public health, and in recognition of his field-changing research on the interrelated past of contemporary Asia. I think we have to say without any hesitation at all that Sunil Amrith is a great historian. But more than that, he is an inspiring historian, and a historian with a vision that not only inspired him, but can inspire others and promote understanding of our past. One of the elements, not the only one of the elements of that vision is the understanding that no region, no country in the world can be studied in isolation. There are people moving all the time. That's gone on for thousands of years. You have to reflect on the history of India to understand how Indian history is intimately connected with migration in and out. Professor Amrith has been particularly concerned with India's relation with, or South Asia's relation with Southeast Asia, and migration and diaspora in South and South Asia, East Asia. One of his books, Crossing the Bay of Bengal, another totally brilliant book. He has outlined how important these migratory influences have been. They're sometimes forgotten, and it's easy to forget history of migration, even though they change the nature of the culture in which we live quite radically. Not all the movements of ideas and people are always non-problematic. In his first book, Sunil Amrith actually studied it. It's called Decolonizing International Health, how the idea of the World Health Organization in its application to South and Southeast Asia had a lot of elements which are left over from the colonial structure and did not quite rise to the need for the healthcare that these regions needed. And some of these problems, I'm afraid, still persist today. I know that Sunil Amrith is working now on environmental history, including the history of the climatic forces that change the nature of South and Southeast Asia. So he's been an enormously productive historian, a productive historian who has given us not only a story of the past, an account of the past, but also an understanding that history has to be seen in an integral term involving people moving from one part of the world to another. So we are really thrilled to be able to give this award this year to Sunil Amrith, and I would like to congratulate him for this wonderful award.
We asked Professor Amrith to describe how he thinks of his work, and this is what he had to say.
History to me is about the choices that individuals and communities have made at various points in time that have then shaped their trajectories, often in ways that they couldn't have foreseen. As a historian, indeed as a citizen, there is no country that I know which has not been very profoundly shaped by migration. The problem is that those histories of migration have very often been erased from public memory. If there's one thread, one theme that brings all of my work together, it is that we need to think about how our histories are linked, and they're linked in ways that we often forget. I am Sunil Amrith, and I'm a historian of South Asia and the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage Professor Sunil Amrith. May I request Mr. Narayana Murthy and Professor Sen to join in the presentation ceremony, and I request Dr. Ramakrishnan to please present the Infosys Prize in Humanities to Professor Sunil Amrith. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Professor Amrith, a few words.
I'm deeply honored by this award. I'd like to thank the Infosys Science Foundation, Mr. Narayana Murthy, Mr. Shivalal, all of the distinguished trustees for your generous and visionary support for scholarship and education, and for your vital work in attracting young Indians to science and research. To Professor Sen and the jury panel, including Professor Sugata Bose, who's with us today, each of whom has inspired me with their work and example, I am humbled by your vote of confidence in my work, and I shall do my best to live up to it. I would like to thank my family for their support, my wife, Ruth Coffey, my parents, Jay and Shanta Amrith, whom I'm delighted are here today. And there's one other person I must thank who couldn't be here today. Professor Emma Rothschild is a close friend of the Infosys Science Foundation and of many of you here. Nobody has done more to support my work from the earliest days as a graduate student. I really would not be here without her support and inspiration. Writing books can seem like a solitary enterprise, but in no way is scholarship in the humanities a solo effort. No part of my work would be possible without the ideas, the collaboration of a whole community of scholars around the world. And neither would my work be possible without the inspiration of the remarkable students that I'm privileged to teach and to learn from. It's their work that is going to change the world. Thank you all very much indeed.